Welcome to our channel. We'd be grateful if you'd give this video a like and subscribe for more stories that matter. This is a story of betrayal, a hidden truth, and a fight for justice. A black adopted son, erased from his mother's will by a corrupt lawyer and scheming siblings, thought he'd lost everything. But a secret camera held the evidence to unravel their lies. What started as a quiet grief became a battle that exposed greed and restored a legacy, proving truth always finds a way. A black adopted son, a missing page from a will, and a crooked lawyer with secrets to hide. They didn't know the walls had eyes, and the truth was closing in. It was a sunny day when Jamal stood outside the law office, clutching his foster mother's funeral program. He was ready to grieve, not fight. But when the lawyer read the will, Jamal's name was nowhere in it. His white siblings exchanged glances. The lawyer said, "Sorry, your name wasn't included." Something didn't add up, and Jamal wasn't one to stay silent. At 6, Jamal first stepped into the Carter household, a quiet boy with big, watchful eyes and a second-hand backpack. He spoke little. Silence was safer, expectations risky, homes fleeting. But Eleanor Carter was different. She didn't rush to hug him like other foster parents. She knelt, met his gaze, and said, "You're safe here, Jamal. You're home." For a while, he believed her. The Carters lived in a tidy house on the edge of Franklin, Virginia. A white picket fence, weekly barbecues, Sunday pancakes, picture perfect. But behind closed doors, it wasn't always sweet. The Carters had 2 biological kids, Ethan, 8, and Olivia, 10. From the start, they saw Jamal as an outsider, a project, proof their mother's love wasn't theirs alone. It started small. Ethan hoarding toys, Olivia pointing out family photos without Jamal. At school, they introduced him as the foster kid, even after adoption papers were signed. Jamal never raised his voice or pushed back. He tried harder, studied until his eyes burned, cleaned his room, their rooms, cooked, mowed the lawn, smiled through it all. Deep down, he believed being good enough, useful enough, would make them see him. Eleanor always saw him. She slipped extra cookies into his lunch, read bedtime stories, told him he mattered, was loved, would always have a place in her heart and her will. She wasn't casual about it. Folding laundry or sipping tea on the porch, she'd say, "Don't worry, baby. I've made sure you're taken care of. You're my son, like Ethan and Olivia." Jamal never asked for her money or house. He needed acknowledgement, proof those years, bedtime stories, birthday cakes with his name, weren't imagined. But when Eleanor got sick, things shifted. The house grew quiet, tense. Ethan and Olivia visited less, and when they did, they hovered like vultures, not over her bed, but her things, whispering about the house, jewelry, stocks, as if she wasn't breathing nearby. Jamal stayed close, reading to her when her voice failed, bringing soup, helping her sit, brushing her hair when her hands weakened. One night, sleepless, she asked him to install a small camera in her study, just to feel safer. He didn't question it, just did it, loyal to the woman who deserved it. When she died, Jamal didn't cry in front of anyone. At the funeral, in a pressed black suit, he stood among people who barely met his eyes, clutching the program like glass, smiling politely at condolences. Beneath his calm was something heavier. He knew her promises, and believed them. What he couldn't imagine was someone plotting otherwise, a betrayal brewing behind solemn words and handshakes, aiming to erase him from the family story. But Jamal had learned patience, observation, and when the time came, he'd be ready. The will reading felt too bright, sun streaming through the law office's stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the mahogany desk. No warmth, just tension. Ethan and Olivia sat on one side, arms crossed, smug. Jamal sat alone, fingers clasped, jaw tight. Mr. Hargrove, the family's longtime lawyer, shuffled papers like a magician prepping a trick, cleared his throat, sighed theatrically, and said, "I regret to inform you, your mother privately updated her will weeks before passing." Jamal blinked. "Updated? Privately? That can't be right," he said, voice firm but unsteady. "She told me—" Hargrove raised a hand. "There's only one copy. This one." He slid a stapled stack across the desk. "Witnessed by care facility staff. Unfortunately, Jamal, your name isn't in the final distribution." Ethan didn't hide the smirk tugging his mouth. Olivia glanced at Jamal, almost pitying, but not quite. It was all there in black and white. House, accounts, trust, split between Ethan and Olivia. Nothing for Jamal, not even a mention, as if he'd never existed, never held her hand in her final hours. Jamal's head spun. No mention, no word. But his heart wasn't broken. It was suspicious. He remembered something odd. A week before her death, her body frail but mind sharp, his mother had whispered, "Jamal, can you set up one of those little cameras in my study? Just for peace of mind. Sometimes I think someone's going through my things." He didn't question it, just installed a discreet lens near the bookshelf, hidden, no blinking light, just a quiet eye. She never brought it up again, and in the chaos of her passing, it slipped his mind. But now, watching Hargrove lie with legal polish, Jamal recalled every detail, every cable tucked behind the baseboard, every password for the cloud account, every promise she made. He didn't argue or cry. He stood, nodded, and said, "Thank you for your time." Ethan chuckled. "Guess the charity case didn't pay off, huh?" Jamal turned, looked at him calmly, and said, "We'll see." That night, the house felt emptier than ever. In his old room, still neat, still full of memories, Jamal opened his laptop, logged into the camera's hidden account. Weeks had passed. Maybe nothing recorded. Maybe it failed. Then the screen lit up. Grainy footage, days before her death. Mr. Hargrove entered the study alone, opened desk drawers, scanned papers, pulled a document from his briefcase, swapped it with one she'd written, tucked her original into a folder, and replaced it with a version Jamal had never seen. Worse, he wasn't alone. Ethan stood behind, watching, silent. Jamal's hand trembled on the mouse. Betrayal had always whispered in the background, but now it screamed from the screen. A theft, a deliberate erasure, a rewriting of a legacy never theirs to control. He had proof. The laptop's glow lit Jamal's face in the dark study. The only sound, the faint hum of the fan. His hands hovered over the mouse as footage loaded from the cloud. A weak signal, a frail heart, but a fierce will. His mother's final gift. The video began, dated 12 days before her death, the camera angled over her desk, as she'd asked. Eleanor sat there, posture fragile, but voice steady, alone, looking at the lens. "This is for clarity," she said, thin but firm. "My will states all my estate be divided equally among my 3 children. Yes, 3. Ethan, Olivia, and Jamal." Jamal's breath caught. "I know some may disagree. Some never fully accepted him. But he's my son, deserves as much as anyone." She coughed, paused, then pulled a folder from her drawer, held it to the camera. "This is the signed will, executed, witnessed. If anything happens to this document, know I never changed my mind." The screen went dark. Jamal leaned in, heart racing. Another video, time-stamped 4 days later. Hargrove entered alone, moving like he belonged, like he'd done this before. He opened the drawer, took the folder Jamal had just seen, and slowly replaced it with a thicker, newer one. He slipped the original into his leather briefcase. Then Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Done?" he asked. Hargrove nodded. "They won't question it." Jamal paused the video. Still, no outburst, just quiet, deadly calm. He clicked download, saved the footage to a thumb drive, closed the laptop, grabbed his jacket. It was time. Next morning, Hargrove looked up from his desk, not expecting Jamal at his door. Same office, same fake smile. But Jamal didn't sit. He walked to the desk, pulled a small thumb drive from his pocket, and placed it on the polished wood. "What's this?" Hargrove asked. "Clarity," Jamal said, voice calm, almost gentle. Hargrove reached for it, but Jamal raised a hand. "Before you play it, I suggest you recall the last time you were in my mother's study." Hargrove froze. For a man who prided himself on composure, the shift in his eyes said everything. His mouth opened, then shut. Jamal leaned in, voice low. "She asked me to install a camera for peace of mind. Turns out she was right to worry." Hargrove swallowed hard. "I suggest you revise the will immediately, before I send copies of this to the Bar Association, police, and every news outlet in this city." Silence hung heavy. Hargrove nodded, robotic, a man watching his empire crack. Jamal didn't smile or gloat. He turned and left. He wasn't here for revenge, but for truth, now back in his hands. The Carter family gathered in the lawyer's conference room, sunlight streaming through tall windows, mocking the tension in the air. The table gleamed, Hargrove at its head, fingers steepled like he was in control. Jamal stood at the far end, silent, calm, an outsider again, but now holding the truth. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, smirking. Olivia barely glanced at Jamal scrolling her phone, eyes dull with indifference. For them, this was a formality, a final stamp on a future they thought was theirs. But Jamal had what they didn't expect. He reached into his coat, pulled out the thumb drive, and said quietly, "I want to show you something." Hargrove's fingers twitched. "Jamal, this isn't—" Jamal plugged the drive into the wall-mounted TV. The screen flickered to life. Grainy video filled the room. Eleanor Carter, their mother, at her desk, speaking to the camera, voice soft but resolute. "My will states everything I have is to be divided equally among my 3 children." Gasps rippled. Olivia dropped her phone. Ethan leaned forward, mouth ajar. Hargrove paled. The video continued. Eleanor held up the will, showed the date, named Jamal, clear, undeniable. Then the second clip played. Hargrove entering alone, opening the drawer, swapping documents, Ethan stepping in, asking, "Done?" The room turned icy. Jamal stood still, hands at his sides, eyes like steel on Hargrove. "You stole my mother's voice," he said, low and even. "You tried to erase me from her life, her legacy." No one spoke. Hargrove's lips trembled. Olivia whispered, "Oh, God." Ethan stood silent. No quips now. Jamal faced the room. "She didn't just raise me. She chose me. No lie, no paper, no backroom deal can change that." The door opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, summoned by a firm staffer once the footage began. "Mr. Hargrove?" one asked. His voice cracked. "This is a misunderstanding." No one listened. The officers escorted him out, one on each side, as he stammered excuses. The will was declared fraudulent, voided, a full investigation launched. Ethan slumped, stunned. Olivia turned away, ashamed. Jamal didn't gloat or raise his voice. He took the thumb drive, slipped it into his pocket, and walked to the door. "I didn't come for your apologies," he said, pausing just long enough. "I came for justice." Then he left, not just the room, but the shadow they'd tried to keep him in for years. When the door closed, the silence he left was louder than any shout. Seasons turned. Autumn painted Franklin in gold and crimson. The Carter house stood, quieter now, its secrets exposed. Jamal hadn't returned to the lawyer's office. He didn't need to. Closure wasn't a place, but a choice. He stood under warm sun outside a small brick building nestled between a church and a library. A hand-painted sign on the glass door read, "Carter Justice Fund." Inside, no mahogany desks or leather chairs, just a clean space, 2 donated computers, and a wall lined with legal books, civil rights histories, resources for those who didn't know. Their power. Jamal stepped in, nodded to a young woman at the desk, a recent law school grad he'd sponsored. "Anyone come by today?" he asked. She smiled. "A teen from East Franklin thinks her foster uncle forged papers. Needs help." Jamal nodded slowly. The story was too familiar. This was why he did it. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to a family that never fully claimed him, but to rewrite someone else's story, someone less lucky at catching a lie. Truth didn't shout or demand. It whispered, waiting for someone to listen. He recalled the judge's words when the original will was restored. "Mr. Carter, you didn't just defend your rights. You reminded us what justice looks like." Jamal didn't see himself as a hero, just a man who refused to be erased. After the scandal, Hargrove's firm collapsed under public scrutiny. Ethan vanished from social media. Months later, Olivia sent a short, awkward letter of apology. Jamal didn't reply, not from anger, but because he no longer needed to justify his existence. His mother had done that with her voice, her will, her faith in him when no one else had. Her legacy lived in every document he reviewed, every wrong he helped right, every scared, silent soul crossing his threshold. As the sun shifted, Jamal leaned against the doorframe. The street was calm, and a boy, no older than 7, passed with his father, pausing to read the sign. "Carter Justice," he said aloud. His father smiled. "That place helps people cheated out of what's theirs." The boy blinked, nodded shyly at Jamal, and ran off. Jamal froze, a lump in his throat. That was belonging, not blood, but impact. In a world that once told him he didn't matter, Jamal answered the only way that counted, not with noise, but with proof. Truth didn't need permission, just someone brave enough to carry it.